Welcome into this OKPreps exclusive here on OKPreps.com. I'm Managing Director Michael Knight, and over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to dive into who the 10 finalists are for the 2017 OKPreps Player of the Year. The 2017 football season has come to a close, and it was full of entertaining performances from individuals all over the state of Oklahoma. State champions were crowned over the weekend in 3A all the way down to Class B, and we'll see some representatives from those classes within the 10 finalists of the award. A couple of weeks ago, we listed the 25 candidates for the 2017 OKPreps Player of the Year award, and tonight we narrow the field down to 10, and in a couple weeks, we will announce the winner of the 2017 OKPreps Player of the Year award. So here's what's going to happen over the next 30 minutes. Here in this first segment, we're going to talk about the award itself, some of the history, some of the players who have won it in the past, as well as what you can expect on OKPreps throughout the next couple of weeks. In our next segment, we will list the first 5 finalists alphabetically. So we'll start alphabetically, we'll list the first 5, and then in our final segment, we'll list the final 5, and you will have your 10 finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award. Also, starting now, you can vote for your pick, the fans' favorite for OKPreps Player of the Year. Last year, we had nearly 500,000 votes, so I definitely encourage you to try to outdo that this year, as you can vote as many times as you want for your pick for OKPreps fans' favorite. Again, that poll is open now, and you can start voting as many times as you want all day, every day. So here in this first segment, I want to talk a little bit about the award itself, who has won it in the past, and really it's been a narrow field as far as the winners who have won it. It's Class 3A quarterbacks, and spoiler alert, we will not have a four-peat, as a 3A quarterback will not win it this year, but in the past we've had Locust Grove's Mason Fine. He won the first one back in 2014. He's now an all-conference quarterback at North Texas. Lincoln Christian quarterback Micah Wilson won it back in 2015. He just finished up his redshirt freshman year at the University of Missouri. And last year, it was Jones quarterback Brandon George winning the award, and he is now just finished up his freshman year at Southern Illinois. So Class 3A quarterbacks have owned the award, but that will not continue this year, as we will have a new class and maybe even a new position group winning the award this season for 2017. Also, I want to remind you, you can vote as many times as you want for fans' favorite for the OKPreps Player of the Year award. And I want to go into what decides who are the finalists, who are the candidates, and eventually who wins the award. And it's several things. One, you have to have strong stats. Of course, I'm always going to be a guy who really appreciates the stat sheet stuffers, as they say. So you got to put up big numbers, and all 10 finalists did just that. And really, when you look at the 25 candidates that we listed a couple weeks ago, one thing they all have in common is the fact that they all have had dominant years, whether they're seniors, juniors, or even some sophomores made appearances as candidates for the award. Also, you have to have a huge impact on your team, whether it's playing offense, defense, special teams, all 3, 2 out of 3. We want to see you have a huge impact on your team. And then finally, how well did your team do? Look, football at its core is a team sport. So did your team go all the way to win a state championship? Did your team miss out on the playoffs? You know, what happened with your team? So those 3 things really are the core values to how we decide who are candidates, who are finalists, and then who eventually wins the OKPreps Player of the Year award. We're going to take our first time out, and when we come back, we will list off the first 5, the finalists for the OKPreps Player of the Year award. That's coming up right after this brief timeout here. It's the OKPreps Player of the Year finalist announcement show here with this OKPreps exclusive on OKPreps.com.
A game-changing mobile application is heading to your high school. The NIAAA National High School Sports app. Follow your favorite school from anywhere around the world. Watch live broadcasts on your mobile device so you never miss a play when you can't attend the game. Get broadcast and final score notifications no matter where you are. Keeping up with schedules, scores, rosters, news, and social media has never been easier. The NIAAA app is powered by Mascot Media.
Welcome back to this OKPreps exclusive here on OKPreps.com. We're announcing the 10 finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year Award. I'm Managing Director Michael Knight, and it's time to dive into who the first 5 finalists are for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year Award. The first finalist is one of the rare defensive players on the list. Our first finalist is Bixby linebacker Kobe Tillman. Kobe Tillman was a huge part of Bixby's 3 consecutive state championships from his freshman to junior year. He also led the Bixby Spartans back to a state championship during his senior campaign. Tillman elevated his game to another level as a senior this year with 200 tackles on the season. He also had 13 sacks, and he also played an important role on offense as he became the short yardage back for the Spartans, especially in goal line situations. As you see, he also had 7 rushing touchdowns on offense for the Spartans. So he became a two-way player for Bixby. He helped lead Bixby back to a state championship game. They fell short to Booker T. Washington, but Kobe Tillman, without a doubt, was one of the more disruptive players in the state. And not only that, but he has had a fantastic career. Really had an instant impact starting as a sophomore, and then junior year he was unbelievable. I still remember his performance in a state championship victory over Lawton last year as a junior. He was all over the field in a comeback victory over the Wolverines. That was a dude who could not stop. Now, as far as a high school football recruit, he isn't getting as much love as he possibly should, because this is a kid who can play just about anywhere. Just ask any of the coaches in 6A Division II. And I did. I asked one coach in 6A Division II, what do you think about Kobe Tillman? And he said the kid can absolutely play anywhere without a doubt. This kid is without a doubt a star on the defensive side of the ball. He's been a standout for the Bixby Spartans over the last 4 years, winning 3 state championships in his career, and he also led Bixby back to a state championship runner-up appearance this year as a senior. Again, 200 tackles, 13 sacks, and then he added the offensive element this year, a very impressive senior season as well as a career from Bixby linebacker and, in some situations, running back Kobe Tillman. Our next finalist for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year Award is Corbin Daniels of Holland Hall, wide receiver, defensive back, also returned kicks in special teams. He did just about everything for Holland Hall this year, as he was, he did just about everything except sell popcorn at halftime. As there you see, he had 40 catches on offense for 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns. And on the defensive side of the ball, you might make the argument that he was even more valuable with over 100 tackles on the season. He had 13 interceptions, and depending on which stat you look at, which news leader you look at as far as where their stats are kept, he is at the top or near the top in the state in interceptions this season. He also had an impact in special teams with a couple kick returns for a touchdown, as well as a punt return for a touchdown. And one of those 13 interceptions he also took back for 6. So he had 18 touchdowns total on the season, and he did it in a variety of ways. Corbin Daniels immediately became a household name in Class 2A. He was a breakout star for Holland Hall this year in their second year competing in OSSAA football. They were in the top 5 from the start of the season to all the way in the playoffs. They got upset by Davis in the playoffs in a quarterfinal round, a tough overtime loss, but it was not because of Corbin Daniels. This kid can absolutely play on offense, defense. He did just about everything for Holland Hall this year, and he was without a doubt one of the breakout stars. Maybe we didn't quite know about him at the beginning of the season, but yeah, I'll tell you, by the end of non-district play at the end of September or midway through September, people knew who Corbin Daniels was, and he had an excellent senior season, and that is a perfect example of why he is one of the 10 finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year Award. Our next finalist is a kid who I have enjoyed watching over the last few years. He was a finalist for the award last year, and he's done it again this year. It is John Marshall running back Devontae Lee. Last year as a junior, he had a fantastic season with nearly 3,000 yards on the ground and over 30 touchdowns. This year, he had to fight the injury bug a little bit, so that limited his carries. As you see, only 169 carries on the season, but that did not limit how many times he reached the end zone, as well as his yardage, as he went over 2,000 yards once again for the second straight year, and also reached the end zone 35 times on the season. Just a fantastic 2-year stretch for John Marshall running back Devontae Lee. And what else can you say about him? He helped lead John Marshall to their first state championship in over 2 decades, as he helped lead John Marshall to a state title win over Beggs in a very hard-fought game to win the Class 3A state championship. And this is a kid who was not at 100% in the semifinals or the championship game, and he helped lead his team to victory. An absolute steal for Nevada, as he's currently committed to the University of Nevada, but this kid can play anywhere. And now look, I understand he's a little short, size questions, the top end speed questions, but you just put on the tape and enjoy, because this kid runs over just about anybody who comes across him. And the most impressive thing was his play in the playoffs, especially in the semifinals and championship game, when you take into account that he was not 100%, he was not even close to 100%, and yet he still had over 200 yards in the state title game, as well as 2 touchdowns, which came in handy as John Marshall only scored 2 touchdowns in their state title game. They won 14-7. Devontae Lee scoring both touchdowns for the Bears. For the second straight year, Devontae Lee is a finalist for the OKPreps Player of the Year award. Our next finalist for the award is Millwood offensive and defensive lineman Israel Antwine. Now, some of the finalists that you're about to see and have already seen have had tremendous stats throughout the year. And look, when you're talking about an offensive or defensive lineman, they're usually not going to have some of the stats that can compare to some of the other finalists on this award, as well as some of the candidates. But this kid is an absolutely disruptive force on offense and defense, and you can't deny what he meant to this team over the last couple of years, as Millwood has won back-to-back state championships. They have gone 14-0 every single season, and this year, with Antwine as a senior and anchoring that offensive and defensive line for the Falcons, Millwood was unstoppable. They had a stretch of 6 consecutive games where they shut out just about everybody. They nearly went the entire playoffs without allowing a single point. They only gave up 7 points to Washington in the state championship game. You knew that we had to have a finalist from Millwood as a part of this year's grouping for finalists for OKPreps Player of the Year award, and we went with the most disruptive player and most dominant player on the team. And look, we could have picked several different guys from Millwood. They have a junior running back in Marcus Major who had an absolutely breakout season for the Falcons. Maybe his time is next year to be a finalist for the award, but this year we went with Antwine, the senior, the anchor of this offensive and defensive line. He dealt with double teams, triple teams as a defensive tackle. Opposing offensive lines didn't really know what to do with him, how to keep him from getting into the opposing backfield. That is why he is one of the finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award. Our next finalist for the OKPreps Player of the Year is another state champion. It is Carl Albert, wide receiver and safety, Jason Taylor II. This kid was an absolute star. He's committed to Oklahoma State, similar to Millwood's Israel Antwine, both of them committed to the Cowboys currently. And there you take a look at just about everything that he did for the Titans. 42 catches on offense, 799 yards, 14 touchdowns. He also had 4 rushing touchdowns as he helped Carl Albert in the playoffs at lining up as a Wildcat quarterback. He scored 4 touchdowns in the playoffs alone on the ground. And then, of course, on defense, which is his specialty, he also had 9 interceptions. So this kid is an absolute star for the Titans. And what's the most impressive thing about what Carl Albert did this year and what Jason Taylor helped lead the Titans to do was the fact that they had everybody gunning for him. They come into this season ranked #1. They won the state championship a year ago. They were going to get everybody's best shot, and they responded with an undefeated season. It started on the road in Lawton all the way back in week 1. They get a close victory over the Wolverines, and then they roll to another undefeated season. And when I say another, I should say their first. That is insane to me when I think about that, when you consider the good teams that have come through Carl Albert over the last few years. This is the first one that has gone undefeated, winning a state championship. Jason Taylor was a big reason for that. Oklahoma State got an absolute steal as he was a dynamic player on offense and defense, and he really elevated his game in the playoffs, just like a lot of these players do. He took his game to another level once the lights got a little bit brighter when the playoffs began. And this is a Carl Albert team that had talent everywhere, but Jason Taylor was just a step above everybody else, not only on the team, but in Class 5A in general. And that's why he is another finalist for the OKPreps Player of the Year award. We're going to take a time out, and when we come back, we will list the next 5 and the final 5 finalists for this year's 2017 OKPreps Player of the Year award. And again, the poll is live and active. You can vote now for this year's fans' favorite. Last year, it was Homony's Zaven Collins winning with nearly 200,000 votes. So look, I know you're thinking the big school players, they're going to run away with this vote. Not so fast. Last year, it was Homony's Zaven Collins. It's a Class A school, and they were able to come through for their star player, and he had nearly 200,000 votes last year, running away with the poll for fans' favorite player of the year. The poll is active, and you can vote early and often throughout the next 2 weeks, and we will announce a winner on Christmas Day. We're going to take a quick time out, and when we come back, we'll list the final 5 finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award.
A game-changing mobile application is heading to your high school. The NIAAA National High School Sports app. Follow your favorite school from anywhere around the world. Watch live broadcasts on your mobile device so you never miss a play when you can't attend the game. Get broadcast and final score notifications no matter where you are. Keeping up with schedules, scores, rosters, news, and social media has never been easier. The NIAAA app is powered by Mascot Media.
Welcome back to this OKPreps exclusive here on OKPreps.com. I'm Managing Director Michael Knight, and we're listing the 10 finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award. We've also listed the first 5 finalists: Kobe Tillman of Bixby, Corbin Daniels of Holland Hall. You also had John Marshall running back Devontae Lee, Millwood's Izzy Antwine, as well as Carl Albert's Jason Taylor II. Those are the first 5 finalists for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award, and we're now going to wrap up the program listing off the final 5, and we start with another state champion, and it starts with Owasso wide receiver, safety, kick returner, did just about everything for the Owasso Rams this year. It's the Scorpion, Josh Proctor. The Ohio State commit showed why he's an All-American, as he did just about everything for the Rams, helping lead Owasso to their first ever state championship and end the 21-year streak between Jinx and Union, winning the state championship in the state's largest class. And I know that, look, Bill Blankenship comes in his first year, he leads Owasso to a state championship, and he's going to get a lot of the credit, and rightfully so. But this Owasso team had talent all across the board on offense and defense, and Proctor, he highlighted that talent and was a huge part of this year's team and state championship run. Whether it was on offense, as a wide receiver, he became Will Keeney's deep threat. He also ran the ball out of the Wildcat formation, end arounds, whatever Owasso needed, Proctor was able to do it. And that was going to be a huge key for this Owasso team, is how often they use, without a doubt, the state's best athlete, as that is exactly what Proctor is. And Blankenship talked about that before the season. They had to figure out ways to get him on the field in important situations, but they couldn't overlook the fact that his most natural position is safety, and he captained that defense alongside Kansas State commit Wayne Jones. Josh Proctor was able to help lead Owasso to a state championship this year, a long-awaited state championship. And more impressive than that was who they had to beat on the road to the state title, because a lot of the times you hear about these teams who try to knock off Jinx or try to knock off Union. They hope to get either on the same side of the bracket, or they hope that Jinx and Unions end up on the same side of the bracket, so they only have to deal with one. Well, Owasso didn't care about that. Not only did they beat Jinx in the regular season, they also beat Jinx in the semifinal, and then followed that up with a 21-14 victory over the Union Redskins. Proctor played on offense just about all night long. Defense, the same amount. This kid is outstanding. Ohio State got a steal. It's not often that Ohio State comes down to Oklahoma and recruits Oklahoma players, but when it comes to this kid, they made an exception, and they got a heck of a player in Josh Proctor. That's why he's a finalist for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award. Our next finalist is a running back who had a breakout season, and Lawton High School just continues to churn out the running backs, as our next finalist of the award is junior running back Miles Davis of the Lawton Wolverines. This kid is a fantastic player for Lawton. He had a breakout season, helped lead Lawton to the state semifinals, another appearance in the semis where they fell short to Booker T. Washington, but it wasn't because of Davis. In fact, you can make the argument that Davis had the most success against Booker T. Washington as any running back, as the Hornets didn't give up a single 100-yard rusher all year except for Miles Davis. Miles Davis was the only running back to run for more than 100 yards against Booker T. Washington this year. He was able to do that in the semifinal. Although the Wolverines did come up short to Booker T. Washington, it wasn't without doing of Miles Davis, as he had a great season and a breakout year as he helped Lawton back into the playoffs, back into the semifinals, and one game short of the state championship game. Over 300 carries, over 2,300 yards, and he also got into the end zone 32 times for the Wolverines. And this junior class at the running back position is a special one, and Miles Davis is just one of many running backs in Oklahoma to keep an eye out for over the next year, because they are going to come back with a vengeance, and Davis, without a doubt, is going to be one of them, as he hopes to lead Lawton not only back to the playoffs next year as a senior, but going after that elusive gold ball, as Lawton has been there. They've gotten close, but they haven't quite cracked through to win the state championship. Davis returning next year makes Lawton a perennial power in Class 6A Division II. After a phenomenal season this year, he had several games where he went over 300 yards. In fact, every single game this season, he went over 100 yards, and it was rare when he didn't get at least 200 yards. The kid had an absolutely breakout season for the Wolverines, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do for an encore next year as a senior. Miles Davis, the latest finalist for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award. We'll stay at the running back position for our next finalist, and that is Sand Springs running back Peyton Scott. This kid had a great season as a senior. He's also a standout wrestler for the Sandites, and people knew about Peyton Scott coming into this season, but he took his game to another level, setting the record for Class 6A, which was set by another Lawton running back earlier in this decade, for the most yards in Class 6A football, with nearly 2,600 yards this season. He was a workhorse for the Sandites with 342 carries on the year. He also reached the end zone 33 times. As you take a look at that, 2,597 yards on the season. He was a workhorse for the Sandites as he helped lead Sand Springs back into the playoffs. Without a doubt, the most impressive performance from Peyton Scott this year was in a victory over Bartlesville, where he ran for over 500 yards in the victory over Bartlesville. That's not easy to do when you're playing against nobody, and this kid ran for over 500 yards in a game. He didn't even play the entire game and was able to get that, as he had, without a doubt, one of the best single game performances that we saw all season. Peyton Scott took his game to another level this year as a senior, and he's another one of these running backs, kind of similar to Devontae Lee that I talked about in the last segment. Completely undersized. He kind of gets overlooked because of the size questions about him, but when you put on the tape, when you watch him play, there's no more questions about whether or not he can play. The kid can absolutely run the football. Now, there's questions whether or not he's going to play football at the next level or maybe wrestle at the next level. He's already had a successful wrestling career, and he's well on his way to having another successful season on the wrestling mat this year. But before that, we had to announce him as the latest finalist for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year. Our next finalist for the award is Midwest City quarterback Preston Colbert. He's another junior that's listed as a finalist for the award, as he had a fantastic season leading Midwest City to their furthest run since the split in Class 6A. Midwest City had yet to win a playoff game since the split. That streak is over as far as their playoff losing streak, as they got a first-round victory, made it into the semifinals, and nearly knocked off three-time defending champion Bixby, as Preston Colbert was wildly efficient, 218 of 281 passing for over 3,200 yards, 36 touchdowns, and he only had 4 interceptions. He also ran the ball well, nearly 100 carries for 832 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. This was a kid who we kind of expected to have this kind of season, but at the same time, you never expect this, as he was wildly efficient. He didn't make any mistakes, and that's what made him and the Midwest City offense so dangerous, as week after week we saw Colbert throw for 5, 6, and account for 6, 7 touchdowns in a game, whether it was throwing or running, but you didn't see him hurt the Bombers ever. And with their only loss in the regular season coming to Booker T. Washington in overtime, Colbert didn't do anything in that game to hurt the Bombers either. And that's always been the question with Midwest City, is can the offense match what the defense is bringing to the table? And that question has been answered with Preston Colbert at quarterback. It's going to be fun to watch and see what he does next year as a senior, and see if he can elevate his game to another level next year and try to lead the Bombers even further and try to get some of that Bomber magic back as Midwest City tries to go after that elusive gold ball. The 10th and final finalist for the OKPreps Player of the Year award is another Class A quarterback. Last year it was Homony's Zaven Collins after winning a state championship for the Bucks. This year it's Afton quarterback as well as defensive back Will Amos. Amos had a phenomenal state championship game, and look, he's not just a finalist because of what he was able to do in the state title game, but that definitely has a lot to do with it, as he ran for over 400 yards and 6 touchdowns, leading Afton to a state championship in a dominating state championship victory over Crescent last week. He also had a fumble recovery on defense as well as an interception, and he had not one but 2 90-plus yard touchdown runs. And there you take a look at the numbers. That's all you need to know. Over 1,200 yards passing and 16 touchdowns. But let's make no mistake about it, this kid was a runner, as he ran for over 3,200 yards and 45 touchdowns on the year. Amos becomes just the 11th player in state history to run for more than 3,000 yards in a single season. And I know some of the question marks with him might be, well, he played in Class A, so they played 15 games. He had one more game compared to some of the others who have broken that streak and broken that record of 3,000 yards. They only played 14 games this year. So Afton had not one but 2 bye weeks this season, so they only played 14 games. He still ran for over 3,200 yards as a senior, 45 touchdowns as well on the ground, and was just a dominating force in Class A, leading Afton to not only a state championship, but a perfect season. And the thing that was the most impressive about him, you have to consider him the Iron Man. He never left the field. The one time that we saw Afton this year was in a 1-versus-2 battle against Rejoice Christian, and he never left the field. He played offense, he played defense, he played special teams. I don't think he took one play off, as they were able to come from behind and beat Rejoice in a huge road win to take over the #1 spot in Class A, and they did not relinquish that spot as they ran the table and were dominant in the playoffs, and they finished it off with a blowout victory over Crescent, where Amos had a performance of the ages, 400-plus yards and 6 touchdowns, as he eclipsed 3,000 yards for the season. He also had 2,000-plus yards on the ground last year as a junior, and he more than outdid himself this year, leading Afton to their first ever state championship in school history, and that is more than enough to qualify him as the final finalist for this year's OKPreps Player of the Year award. I encourage you to stay tuned to OKPreps throughout the next 2 weeks, as it is now officially awards season on OKPreps. We're going to kick things off with our season in review series on Tuesday with a look back at Class 6A Division 1, all the top storylines that happened in 6A1 this year. We will dive back and look back at what happened in 6A1 in 2017, and that kicks off our season in review series. So every day we'll take a look at every class, 6A2, 5A, 4A, 3A, 2AA, and then we'll also even take a look at the 8-man classes, and then we'll have our awards with Breakout Player of the Year, Most Improved Player, some of the breakout stars that we saw this season. We'll also have our OKPreps All-State teams, and then of course the award that we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes or so, the OKPreps Player of the Year. And again, 2 weeks from today, on Christmas Day, we will announce the fans' favorite for OKPreps Player of the Year. And you can vote now, you can vote tomorrow, you can vote all the way up until Christmas Day for your pick for fans' favorite. Last year we had nearly 500,000 votes. I encourage everybody to get out and vote as many times as possible for your pick for this year's fans' favorite. Last year it was Homony's Zaven Collins. The year before that it was Altus running back Taven Bordeaux. Who's going to take home the fans' favorite award? We'll find out on Christmas Day. Also stay tuned to OKPreps.com to find out who is this year's winner of the 2017 OKPreps Player of the Year Award. We have some great finalists and we have some great candidates as well. It's been a fun season and it's going to be fun crowning this year's OKPreps Player of the Year Award. I'm Michael Knight and this has been the OKPreps exclusive here on OKPreps.com.